Hello everybody and welcome to episode 8 of the Work.knits podcast. This is an additional episode squeezed in between the normal podcast schedule. So normally I post a podcast episode once every 2 weeks on a Friday. But this episode is getting squeezed in between because we have hit 500 subscribers and I have been running a giveaway and I finally get to announce the winner of the giveaway. And I'm just too excited to wait for another week. So, welcome if you're a new viewer. I'm so sorry that you have just missed out on this giveaway, but there will be more. And to returning viewers, thank you so much for being here for 8 episodes plus a number of kind of ad hoc thematic videos. I am really enjoying connecting with you all through this channel, and I'm just so excited for what more is to come in this year, and you know, the further conversations we'll be having together. So the kind of rough structure of today's episode, I will first announce the winner of the giveaway because I just think that's too exciting to keep you on tenterhooks, and I'll also just recap how I've approached the giveaway because I think it's worked quite well, but I'm very open to your feedback. And it will probably be the way that I approach the giveaways going forwards. I hope that as this podcast kind of evolves and grows, that I'll be able to do giveaways relatively regularly. I just think it's such a lovely way of giving back to all of you for your support for me in this podcast, but also a really fantastic way to kind of share different brands and different makers within the knitting space, and yeah, hopefully to provide some kind of inspiration and new avenues for knitting or crochet or whatever your craft might be to those who are getting involved. So the way I thought we'd structure the episode today is I thought I'd chat to you about first the giveaway and the winner, and give a quick recap on how I have gone about the giveaway, because I think this might be a format and a kind of structure that I'll use again, subject to all of your feedback. So I'll cover that. I have a kind of slightly new segment that I want to introduce, quite a short one, but hopefully something quite fun. And then I will start to cover finished objects, works in progress and future knitting plans. So I hope that sounds good. I have got a cup of coffee with me here this morning. I hope you have something lovely to drink, whether it's hot, cold, soft or alcoholic, whatever is tickling your fancy at the time when you are watching this. So please do get comfortable. I am sat on the floor today, a little bit rogue, but I have been sat at a desk all week, and I don't know about everyone else, but I just wanted to stretch out a bit more and just do something a bit different. So I hope you're sitting comfortably wherever you are, or if you're kind of busy doing things and listening to this as you go about your tasks, then I hope you are getting some enjoyment from those. So without further ado, giveaway. So I have been running a giveaway now probably for over a month, if not close to 2 months. The idea was to try and coincide the giveaway with my trip to Wonderwool, Wales, because that just would have been a fantastic opportunity to shop for the giveaway prize. And that comes on to kind of how I've been approaching it. So the idea behind this giveaway was to kind of tally it and celebrate hitting 500 subscribers, which still absolutely blows my mind. And if you follow me on Instagram, if you don't already, please do, because that's where I was kind of able to kind of almost give my live response to hitting 500 subscribers. But I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you that watches this, comments, likes, subscribes. Just being able to connect with you all is such a pleasure and just slightly mind-blowing. My approach to kind of selecting the giveaway winner was to essentially say that people should subscribe to this channel and comment on any of my videos from the video when I launched the giveaway, any video published since then, to the point when the giveaway closes. And that comment could be anything. If you wanted a bit of a kind of starting point, I said, you know, introduce yourself, let me know where you're based and what you're enjoying knitting or looking forward to knitting this year. And we had so many people commenting and entering, so that was really lovely. And the idea was that instead of having a kind of package already pre-made, or instead of kind of making the package behind the scenes once the winner had been selected, I wanted to make sure that the winner of the giveaway gets to tell me what their preferences are when it comes to yarn bases, when it comes to colours when it comes to, you know, how they like to knit. Do they want something that they already know about and they just haven't had a chance to knit with it yet? Do they want something completely new that's going to broaden their horizons? Are they based in the US and want to try something from the UK, or vice versa? And obviously I can't make promises, but I really, you know, would then work very hard to try and make the package kind of fit into that general set of preferences that they've given. So I hope that's an appealing way to approach this. It's very much how I would like someone to approach a giveaway if I was the winner. So yes, without further ado, I will now just explain how I selected the winner. And I selected is a very loose term because I did try to do this as fairly as possible, including kind of random, you know, using random number generators, etc. So what I basically did was I tried to use a random comment generator, and please do let me know in the comments if you know of a way to make this work better, but I was finding that because I had comments over several videos, I couldn't include all those videos. It kind of does it more on like a singular video link basis. So what I did instead was I added up all the comments that have been, you know, the number of comments on each of the videos that were included in the giveaway. I then subtracted the number of those comments that were actually my replies. And then I used a random number generator to give me a number between 0 and the total number of comments. And then I went chronologically from the first video, I went through all the comments and just counted until I hit the number that the random number generator had produced. I hope that makes sense. And just the kind of beauty of all this, like all the comments that I had that were entries into the giveaway were fantastic. No, you know, I absolutely loved all of them gave me so much joy. But there was one comment in particular that really struck me because the individual also reached out to me on Instagram and gave me some further feedback about the podcast and just seemed genuinely very invested in what I'm doing, and also kind of gave me feedback on how I was approaching this giveaway and how much they enjoyed that approach. So it just seems so fortuitous that that person is also the winner based on the random number generator. So I am probably going to butcher this individual's name, so I really apologise, and please send me a little voice note on Instagram with the correct pronunciation because I feel dreadful. But the winner, and I'll put this up on screen as well, is Ceara Michalowske. As I say, please let me know how I pronounce your name over on Instagram. I think we're already in touch over there. If you reach out to me, or I'll reach out to you on Instagram over the coming days, and we can discuss your preferences when it comes to what's going to be included in the giveaway package. But I'm just so delighted, A, to be able to do a giveaway, to run a giveaway, B, by the engagement, and C, to be giving the prize to one of so many deserving winners. So congratulations, Ceara. I'm feeling really bad every time I say your name because I have no idea if I'm saying it correctly. Okay, so that is the giveaway, and as I say, let me know your thoughts down below. I'd definitely like to run more. Sorry if this has been a bit of a ramble all over the place, but I hope in and amongst that some of that makes sense. Moving into the next section of today's podcast, I have been doing quite a lot of research, you might be able to call it, watching other podcasters. I already watched a number of knitting podcasters, but I've worked really hard to defy YouTube's algorithm and find new podcasts and kind of learn from other podcasters who make the most fantastic videos. So I'm working hard to improve. One of the things that I will be improving, hopefully, on this video is volume. I will be increasing the volume of my voice, the recording section, during the editing process. So do let me know down in the comments if this is better. Fingers crossed. I am building up to getting a microphone to make the recording quality better, along with a whole load of other recording equipment, but we are not quite there yet. But the other thing that I am going to borrow with pride from another podcast that I watched recently, and I will try and insert the name of the podcast here so that you can go and check them out. They have a fantastic podcast. But they started one of their episodes with a quote from a book that they love. And I just thought this was so lovely because I actually I read quite a lot, and I tend to highlight sections in books that really resonate with me, and then I have a little notes thing on my phone where I collate all of those quotes. And sometimes when I'm feeling a bit demotivated, or if the start of the week is just I'm not feeling that energy, then I will go into this list and look at these quotes, and they will kind of give me that burst of life again. So I thought, what a fantastic idea to share those kind of quotes, those words that inspire you with other people as part of a podcast episode. So I thought, rather than books, although we may have some book quotes later on, down the timeline as this podcast progresses, but I thought maybe very, very short poems would be quite nice. And when I say short, I'm talking about 1 to 2 line poems. But there is a poet in particular who I love and who I go to time and time again for inspiration and empowerment. And that is Rupi Kaur. I don't know if people have heard of her. She's incredibly famous, but I know that poetry is also a bit of a niche that not everyone has delved into. She's got several books of poems or anthologies of poems that she has published. I have 2 of her books. I got gifted them by a very dear friend who knew I'd love the content. So the 2 that I have, which kind of came together in a duo, is The Sun and Her Flowers, which is essentially broken into sections of poems that relate to wilting, falling, rooting, rising and blooming, which I just thought was beautiful. And then Rupi's other kind of the second book of poems that she released was Milk and Honey. And on the back, I'll just read you the blurbs on these because both of them are poems in and of themselves. So for The Sun and Her Flowers, the blurb says, "This is the recipe of life, said my mother as she held me in her arms as I wept. Think of those flowers you plant in the garden each year. They will teach you that people too must wilt, fall, root, rise in order to bloom." So that's the idea behind this one. Apologies for my slightly jilted reading of that poem. I'm not going to look at you for a second, so hopefully this poem will be read more smoothly. For Milk and Honey, the blurb reads, "This is the journey of surviving through poetry. This is the blood, sweat, tears of 21 years. This is my heart in your hands. This is the hurting, the loving, the breaking, the healing." So, yeah. I'm going to be pulling a lot of poetry from these books. The poem I selected for today is from the Rising section, and the poem is simply, "Never feel guilty for starting again." And I thought that was such a great line when it comes to knitting, because I was thinking through the day, I was reading through the comments, and someone said to me about one of my whips, which I'll show you later, I've been working on for a little while now, and someone said, "How has that turned out so well?" And they didn't mean it in a nasty way, I think, because, we'll go into more detail in a bit, but basically the whip is like a doodle I've just kind of made up as I go along. And, the viewer was saying, how has that come out so well? And I realised the answer is, well, there are so many failures that have happened before that in order for that one to come out well. And I think as knitters we're so focused at times on the things that go right and the finished products and these beautiful items that we make, that sometimes we forget to celebrate the failures. And I know celebrate sounds like a weird word, but we learn so much through the knitting projects that go wrong. And I hope that was a message that I kind of communicated in my 2-part video on long-term whips and why they were long-term whips. And when I was talking about everything I've knit, I was going through and discussing all the mistakes I've made. And in this podcast, you'll see things that I make that go wrong. My Medina top is a perfect example. It still has one sleeve that's bigger than the other that I need to go back and rectify. So, yeah. When you look at people and you think, how do they do that? How do they create this? Or how do they create that? Or how do they handle that situation a certain way? Just remember that in order to excel at something, you have to have failed at it so many times to begin with. But yes, never feel guilty to start again. I think that's going to be my line for this week or this weekend. Okay, so now we're going to move on from this slightly new segment. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee. And I thought I'd touch on finished objects. So what I'm wearing, caveat, I did not sew this entire blouse and I know you can't see all of it, but if any of you checked out my video that I produced in the last couple of weeks, it was a bit of a kind of slightly different video for this channel, but essentially it was talking about my tips for making a more sustainable and long-lasting summer wardrobe. And if you watch that, you will have seen this blouse, because this blouse was picked up from TK Maxx. It's which is a kind of, I don't know how global TK Maxx is actually, if I'm honest. TK Maxx is a brand in the UK that essentially they work with high street and designer brands, and they take all of the end of line products, so all the stuff that's been in the sales but hasn't sold, all the stuff that the designer, you know, it might be 2-3 years out of, what's what I'm looking for, it might have been from 2 to 3 seasons ago, so it's just kind of all the leftovers, and they sell them at very reduced amounts. And sometimes those garments haven't sold because they are, maybe there's like a very, very small fault with them. Normally nothing major, but nonetheless, sometimes there is something, you know, a very small flaw. And in the case of this blouse, it had buttons that were made in a matching fabric, and it's got 13 buttons down the front, and 5 of them were missing. And so in that video, I was just talking about the fact that it would have been so easy to walk past this blouse because it was missing a component, but actually learning a skill as basic as sewing on buttons allows you to access items that you might have otherwise passed up. And so yes, I had 13 shirt buttons from a men's shirt that I had recycled into something else, and I'd kept the buttons and I have just used those down the front. So I have finished the garment, so to speak. So that's my first kind of semi-finished object, although a little bit of a cheat. My other finished object is just here, and it's still a little bit damp, if I'm being very honest. So in the last episode I said I was going to focus off the back of my holiday on finishing a number of my quite big whips, because I have some knitting plans that I want to get going on. And then I caught a bug, which was, as in a knitting bug, which was I really wanted to knit a summer top, and I haven't really done it before. I've kind of accidentally made a summer top when I knit the Chauncey sweater by Isabel Kramer, and I knit it short sleeved in a kind of cotton wool blend, and so that's kind of a summer top, but I've never knitted like a camisole until now. So literally since the last episode, last weekend, I knitted the Tip Top Tank by Emily Baldwin, who is also, I believe, the owner of Makers and Makers store, which is a knitting and supplies store, which looks beautiful. But this is a free pattern, and I have knit this in Hjert Garn in their organic trio base, which is like a 50-25-25 wool cotton silk blend. I will put information on the colourway in the show notes, which will be linked and over on my blog. But yeah, this is a beautiful yarn. It's actually the same brand as the cotton I used for my Chauncey sweater, and when I was talking about that in my, you know, everything I've knit video, I was saying actually the cotton wool blend hadn't held up very well under the arms. I'm hoping that because this is a thicker base and that it's got the silk component, I'm hoping it will wear slightly better, plus it's not particularly tight under the arms. But yes, I knit the 3rd size in the Tip Top Tank pattern, which, as I said, is a free pattern. I knit this up on 3.75mm needles, and I made quite a few modifications, I'd say, so I will run through those now. But I'd also just say right up at the top, I don't think this is a particularly size inclusive pattern, and it is a free pattern, so I do understand that, you know, grading takes a lot of time, and for a free pattern it's fantastic, but it is not very size inclusive. However, I do think it's a very easy pattern to modify to make it to the size that you desire, and I'll try and explain how I've done that for myself. even though I was kind of knitting technically the third size, how the modifications that I've made could be done to make it to whatever size you'd like. So, I mean, as a starting point of that, I didn't do a gauge swatch because I figured I'd know, because it's knit bottom up, I'd know pretty quickly whether or not it was looking like it'd be the right circumference for my ribcage and my waist. And then as I'd go along, I'd need to figure out if it was the right circumference for other parts of my body. But I think if you were going to go drastically off-piece from the sizes listed in the pattern at either end of the spectrum, then I think it'd be really helpful to do a gauge swatch and then kind of calculate how many stitches you're going to need to do for that cast on. But essentially, I should also say there's two different versions. There's a version with kind of flat straps and there's a version with little tie straps, which is also really cute. And then within each of those patterns, it's got a long and a cropped version. I cast on, I never know which way to hold this, there we go, let's hold it here. So it's, as I said, it's still a bit wet, so it's not quite hanging in the right shape, and it's not quite liking this hanger, if I'm honest. So I cast on, I did about 5 rows of just 1 by 1 ribbing, and then the sides, they give you instructions to kind of create a faux seam. I kind of did my own, just because I wanted this to be very quick and potato chippy, so I wanted to do what was familiar to me. But I essentially did, in the seam I did purl 1, knit 2, purl 1. And then, it's a free pattern, so I'm not giving masses away, but for the cropped version, I think it said to knit the kind of torso about between 20 and, I think it went up to like 28 centimetres. I just kept knitting until I could like hold it up and I felt it fell under my bust line, because I'd read ahead and I knew the next instructions were essentially going to start forming the 2 front parts for the v-neck and the 2 front parts of the back. I then got to my desired length. So I think, again, if you're modifying this, whichever size you're modifying it to, whatever kind of circumference, you essentially would need to keep holding up to your body until you're at the point where you would want to start splitting for the armholes and the front and the back. So you might actually want that to be kind of midway up your bust, and that's totally fine. You just need to make sure that you are trying it on so that that accommodates for the curve of your bust. And what did I do then? Well, the front and the back in the pattern are worked exactly the same, and kind of the left and the right are just mirrors of each other. And I knew that wasn't going to work for me either, because, why did I think that? Well, I knit the back first, which I think was a good thing to do. So let me show you the back. So I knew I wanted a very deep V at the back, which is not quite showing with the way that I've positioned this on the hanger. 1 second. So there we go. So you can kind of see the back is lower than the front. So what I did was, instead of starting to decrease for the side, the armhole and the centre back at the same time, I started the centre back early. And then I introduced the decreases that they'd asked for the armhole. And I think what they asked for was essentially like about 11 sets of decreases along the side of the armhole, and then you would do these decreases at the same time until you reached a certain stitch count, and then you just, which I think is like around 14 stitches, and then you just keep knitting flat. I am fine with that shaping for the back, but I was thinking, even if I hadn't started this lower, even if I'd started this a bit higher, I was thinking, well, if I do the same on the front, I'm going to end up with so little fabric covering my top of my bust. And that might be a look you love, and that's totally fine. But for me, I was thinking about, okay, actually I do want to be able to wear a bra or a bikini under this. And I'm fine with like a hint of that showing. That can be a look. But I would want that to be very intentional. I wouldn't want it to be that the top was slipping around and it was just randomly showing different bits out of my control, so to speak. So what I did on the front was I started the decreases for the front V at the same time as I started them on the sleeve, but I did 5 decreases only under the arms, so more of the arm shaping is on the back than the front. And then I just did decreases from the front V going along, which means that then I wasn't taking any fabric away from this side really, which means I've got more coverage down the side of my bust. So that's what I did in terms of the shaping. When I got to the shoulder, I did a 3 needle bind off on the shoulders, which I think has worked really nicely. Some other things that I did, one of which I probably should have mentioned earlier before as I was going along, but hey, I'll mention it now. So the other thing I did was I was thinking the slight issue with these cami tops sometimes is that we assume we have the same volume of curves on the front of our bodies as we do on the back, which is not the case. So when I'd knit the torso up to the point where I knew I was splitting, instead of splitting it, putting markers in 50-50, I think I had 184 stitches, and what I did was I put 84 stitches for the back and 100 for the front, and that was important to have made that decision. I think I actually made that decision pretty much when I cast on, because you start this side seam, and as you can kind of see as I'm hanging it up, and it's more obvious when this garment is lying semi-flat as opposed to when it's on my body, but you can kind of see the side seams actually are sitting to the back, they're not sitting like right on the edge here, and that's because I put 84 stitches between those side seams for the back and 100 at the front, and that just also meant that I was going to have more fabric to cover my bust and the curves on the front of my body. So that was one alteration. The second alteration, and I'm got to be honest, by the time I got to the shaping of the top, I'd made so many alterations that I kind of was just going with my own thoughts, and I've got to be honest, I didn't really read the pattern in massive detail, but I don't recall there being an edging to these shapes, the shaping on the top, that I felt would be stable. So what I ended up doing was slipping the last 2 stitches with the yarn behind, and what that's kind of done is made like a semi I-cord edging, not quite but semi, and I did the same along the front, so I don't know if you can kind of see this edge. So that really helped with kind of making what I think is quite a nice finish on the top. And then the very final detail that I'd highlight, and this is a bit of an experiment, so I don't know how this is going to go, I've never done it before, but I was very conscious that with this shaping at the front, with the V at the back, and also with the shaping at the side seams, that you've got some stitches that are very vulnerable at those the points of the V's. And so after I had finished it all off and I was weaving in the ends, I actually have made, I don't know how to show this, but little bars at those points, and that's just kind of stitching several times over at those points to try and just give them a bit more reinforcement, but also I kind of think when I'm looking at it in person, it kind of adds a finesse and an element of tailoring. So we'll see whether it does what I want it to do in terms of the structural support, but even if it doesn't, I do just think it looks like a really nice finishing touch. It's the kind of thing that if you had a sewn linen top that you're kind of buying ready to wear, they sometimes do a bar stitch at the bottom of like V-neck openings and stuff, and it's just a nice finishing technique. So either way, I think I'll quite like it. But yes, that is my Tip Top Tank by Emily Baldwin. And I'm super pleased that I knit it, and as I say, it was kind of a spontaneous cast on. It's still a little bit wet, but I'm really, really looking forward to wearing it. I will try and insert some pictures here of me wearing it, hopefully when it's a bit drier when I'm editing this podcast. Okay, I'm going to put this back behind me. Right, another sip of coffee, I think. It's now quite cold coffee, but I'm actually not opposed to it. It's a relatively sunny day here in the UK, and it's been muggy, like close, and a bit stormy. So having something nice and refreshing is actually not a problem. I've realised when editing these videos that I say okay and so a lot when I transition, so I'm going to avoid saying that. To move on to works in progress, I did partially do what I said I'd do last weekend after I released my last episode. I made some really quite significant headway on one of the whips that I had, not languishing, but I'd had to pause whilst I was on holiday because it was a bit too big to pack. And that is currently my inside out Tin Can Knits Strange Brew sweater top that I'm making, and in my last episode I talked through where I'd got to in terms of knitting the body, and that I'd knit a curved hem, and that I thought that was going to be easier to show you probably once blocked. And I said I was working on the sleeve. I knit like maybe 4 inches on the sleeve. I have now knit my first sleeve. I have casted off and done a little I-cord bind off, and basically I need to try this on to make sure that the shaping that I have done falls in the way that I want it to when it's on the body. I think it will. So yeah, I just need to try that on, and then I just need to mimic that sleeve on the other side, which should actually be pretty quick to do, and I should be able to do over the course of this weekend. So hopefully this is going to be another finished object very, very shortly. I won't go through everything that I covered last week in terms of what I did on the body shaping and all that kind of thing, but I will just very briefly give you details on yarn and needles in case this is your first time joining us. This is based on the Strange Brew sweater pattern by Tin Can Knits. I used most of their stitch counts and measurements for the yoke, but I did make some of my own motifs, particularly this kind of 1x1 rib style thing was just made up. And this is knit up in, the main blue colour is Holstgarn Heathered Navy in their 2-ply super soft jumper base, and I have got a cone of that. This yarn had previously been knit into a massive blanket on my knitting machine, and then I have unravelled that and I'm using it for the sweater. So that's the main colour. The contrast colour, and I did put it in my show notes. I did do show notes, guys. I'm so proud of myself. I put it in my show notes. It's Schwennendort yarn, which I think is a German or Austrian yarn brand. It has been stocked in Beautiful Knitters in London, here in the UK. I went on their website though and I saw they hadn't got this base anymore, but I believe this was a merino silk base, and the colourway is Ripened Corn. It's got beautiful, and you can see it perfectly there on camera, it's actually got some purples in with the gold, and it just like adds this beautiful kind of aged feel to the gold. It's not kind of brassy in your face, it's this kind of gentle gold. Anyway, it's beautiful. I could talk for ages about it. So yes, so some progress. Sleeve, just need the other sleeve, and then I know the body looks ridiculously short, but that's because the curved hem is rolling up. So I will block that once I have done this second sleeve. But really excited to have this finished. I can just really see myself pairing this with jeans for walks into town on a Saturday morning, or potentially even into work on slightly more casual days. So very excited about that. Alrighty. I did not make any progress on the cowl that I was making. This is one of my holiday knits, knit up in Sandnes Garn Sunday in the Dusky Rose, and then some Ficalana Saga in a burgundy colourway. I still love this project, I just haven't made any progress on it because I've been really trying to move these jumpers forwards because I have some more jumpers that I want to cast on. So the cowl is a smaller project and also needs me to carry around quite a big chart, and if it's on my phone it's quite hard to navigate it, and if it's on paper then that's a bit cumbersome for packed train journeys. So I have not made very much progress on that, but I have made a tiny bit more progress on, as previously mentioned at the top of this episode, my doodle sweater. So this is a sweater knit up in Sandnes Garn Tresco. I don't know the colourway, I will put numbers and stuff in show notes, but as the kind of inverted commas name of this suggests, I have made this up as I go along. The colourwork and picked up collar is knit in 4mm needles. I then switched to 3.5s, I did some raglan shaping, then I knit the back and the front separately and just straight and flat, and then I did some more raglan increases whilst knitting flat, and then I joined back in the round. And where we are up to is I have knit another inch or so on the body. I probably need to knit this body, I will need to try it on, but because the sleeves are quite wide, I don't think the body needs to be quite as long as I think it does. But anyway, I think probably another 6 to 8 inches on the body, and then I will be good. and then I want to pick the collar, I want to undo the cast off on my collar, knit that to double height and then fold it, and then obviously I will need to knit sleeves. The contrast colour is Rico Design's Superba Alpaca Luxury Sock, and yeah, I think that's it for now on that one. I know it's pretty brief on my whips, but it's kind of some progress, but not like crazy drastic progress to be able to go woo. And I will be finishing these hopefully soon enough that you will get the full lowdown on all the construction, etc. And like, yeah, I will give more detail when I get closer to finishing, but very exciting. So that's kind of what I've been working on. I did pack my time to decompress socks for my train journey to work yesterday. I didn't end up working on them. I actually packed this sweater as well and ended up doing that bit of work on that. But I do want to finish that second sock for my other half. Classic second sock syndrome, but I'm sure that will come back into play over the coming week, because that'll be quite a quick project to finish off, I hope. The other thing I've been doing, which doesn't really sound like a whip, but it is very time consuming, so I'm going to class it as one after a sip of coffee. The other thing I have been doing is frogging things. So for longer term viewers of this podcast, you will know that we are now in a position to know where we're going to be moving to later on this year. I still have no idea around time frame, I still have no idea the absolute specific location, and we still need to put our current house on the market, pending some building works being completed. So there's so many steps between now and then, but I was chatting to my other half the other day and we just really want to get ahead of the game when it comes to just sorting the stuff in our life. We will probably pack stuff up in stages. I was going to make some short bits of footage to share with you in case that's of interest, and I will definitely do a video talking about packing up my yarn and kind of sorting all my notions, etc. But as you'll have seen from my long-term whips video, I just have lots of whips that I either know I'm not going to finish or that just didn't quite go right, speaking of failures, and I just have been meaning to frog them for ages and haven't. So I finally got to doing that. The doodle sweater, the contrast colour, was actually originally knit up into, or was in the process of being knit into a shawl, an asymmetric shawl with some ribbing and knit as you go I-cord, but where I'd done ribbing and then transitioned into stocking net, and now this is really obvious but at the time it wasn't, I didn't like the way the shape altered. It like looked like a hook at the beginning and then it kind of, anyway, blocking probably would have sorted it, but it just wasn't the way I'd envisioned it. So I have then frogged all of that into this massive ball. So that took me a good, I reckon, 45 minutes, because it's quite a fluffy, the alpaca gives this a halo and a stickiness. So that took me a good 45 minutes the other evening. I think I might combine this with some more yarn that I have frogged from a previous project into a future knit. So maybe I will have dabbled with that before the next episode. I have another complete ball of this that's in its original cake, so I've got enough to make a pretty decent project. So yeah, I'm gonna, whilst I continue talking about some other frogging, I will have a think about whether I share that idea with you now or in the next episode. Can't quite see how we're doing on time. Evidently my eyesight is going. So that's that. The other thing that I've been frogging, and I was actually frogging it when I recorded that long-term whips video, and then I'd reached a point that was really annoying, and so I just parked it. I knit another Strange Brew sweater. This is one of maybe my third or fourth sweaters I'd knit, and the yoke, I was so happy with it. I'd made the fit of the sleeves was perfect. I'd made these lovely long ribbed cuffs. It was all perfect, apart from it was 1 inch too cropped. And it was just a really awkward length. I was trying wearing body, like a body top thing underneath it. I tried buying even more high-waisted jeans, and I just couldn't make it work. It just looked like it looked like I'd shrunk my sweater, which was just not the look I wanted. Anyway, this was a really annoying sweater to unravel, partially, and the reason I had to unravel it rather than lengthen it was I bought a cone from Uppingham Yarns of a grey, I think, Gotland yarn, and they didn't stock any more of it, and I didn't have any info on where it had come from to try and source it from other places. So there was just no way I could extend this sweater in a way that looked kind of cohesive. I also thought about doing sweater surgery and making the yoke a bit longer by inserting some more colour work with some other yarns, but again I just didn't have any of the grey to do the background to make the whole thing look cohesive. So now I have, I'm not even going to be able to hold them all up. I just have so many balls of, and I've frogged it with the two strands still held together, so that the grey yarn I'd held double to make kind of like a sport to DK weight. And to be honest, not just because it's a huge faff trying to re-split them into just single strands, but actually also because I really love the weight and the yarn and the texture that's created. So I'm going to keep them held double. Those are the 4 biggest balls, and then I also have from the yoke some little nuggets of another yarn that I absolutely love and haven't used in ages, which is Biche and Bouche Petite Lamb's Wool. So I've got this in their navy colour and then also in this like turquoisey colour. The turquoise is beautiful, it's got like creams and greens and blues in it. The navy has actually got purple heathering in it. It's stunning, it's so soft but really rustic. And these balls are also held double, but I might split these out so that I can use these single stranded in something. So that frogging took me a very long time. In order to complete this strange brew sweater I've just shown you as a whip, in order to do the other sleeve, I need to frog another bit of that blanket I'd made, so there's still more frogging on the horizon. And yeah, what else? I've done a tiny bit of spinning, but not enough to really show you. Like it won't be a noticeable amount. I've still kind of got the same chunks left that I had before. So yeah, I think that is kind of a good summary of what I've been up to. Actually, what I was going to say was what I might do with this double-stranded grey yarn, Gotland yarn that I've now got balled up. That was what I was going to describe. So, 2 ideas for this. One is the Bas Relief wrap by Pearl Soho, which is a really like textured wrap with bobbles. I've actually never done bobbles. And I don't always like them on jumpers, so I think a wrap could be really fun. The only thing is it would be a knitting flat project, so a lot of purling, which I'm so about. But I'm also I'm looking at the photos, and look, Pearl Soho have the most incredible design aesthetic. Their patterns are always beautiful. If I could make a wardrobe out of their patterns, I would. Which is a silly thing to say as a knitter, because technically I can. Well, okay. A more accurate representation is there are so many things that they have made that I'd love to have in my wardrobe. The one thing that puts me off is that a lot of their designs, the beauty of them is their simplicity, but from a making perspective, I don't know how fun all of them would be. I know lots of people have a lot of fun with their blankets, but I think like a lot of their wraps look stunning. I just don't know. Maybe I'd love them. Maybe I should just try it. Maybe I will. Anyway, I digress so hard. This Bas Relief wrap has got bobbles. My one reservation about it is the edging, even in the photos from them, doesn't look that clean, but I think I could probably do something to try and neaten those up. So yeah, that's one idea. The other idea, which I've also mentioned in future knitting plans before, is the Porsche wrap by Natasha Hornby, also known as Moonstruck Designs, I think, on Instagram. That would be another option for what I might knit this into, and who knows, I might actually cast that on sooner rather than later. And breathe. Taking a sip of coffee, there is a final couple of things I was going to chat to you about. One is an event I'm thinking of going to in June, and the other is actually a product that I am not sponsored for. I have not been gifted it, it's purchased with my own money, but I've just been really enjoying it, so I thought I'd share it with you all. I hope you don't mind. So to start with the event, I have mentioned in previous episodes John Arbon Mills, because I've got some of their Yarnadelic base that I'm thinking of knitting up into a thin air sweater by Lily Kate Makes. But I have also mentioned that the John Arbon Mill is actually not far from where I currently live, and a while ago my future mother-in-law gifted me a lifetime membership to the mill for Christmas. And the really special thing about the John Arbon Mill is not only have they supported so many British wool brands, like start-up small businesses, by spinning their wool into their yarn. So they are kind of the, for want of a better word, they're the manufacturer for a lot of small batch yarn companies in the UK. But also they are one of the only woolen spun or worsted spun mills that do these kind of size batches left in the country. That was a really terrible description. I'm going to have to find something from them that describes it in much better detail than I have just done. But yes, the reason I'm raising this now is because they are doing a number of like mill open days, I believe, and I will correct myself on screen if I need to. I believe they're doing one on like the 18th, 19th of June. And then they're doing more the kind of second weekend of July. And I just think that's such a special opportunity to go and like understand more about how the mill operates, because I'm just intrigued why they've ended up being one of the only ones. And I'm so glad they're doing what they're doing, and I'm so glad that they are pushing against the grain. But yeah, I'd just be really interested in how it all works. And as a member, I think that's pretty important. They've got this absolutely fantastic picture in their, one of the brochures you get as a member, of like what their mill looks like inside. I mean, it's a drawing, but yeah, I think it's fab. So yeah, I'd just like to go and see it. And I think they've got a lot of their machines, and I might be wrong, but I think a lot of their machines have come over from Norway. So they've really worked hard to get the equipment they need in-house, which is no mean feat. So anyway, so I will be going along to one of these open days, the actual like kind of like mini yarn festival type thing that they are having, where they've got all their yarns, they've got a few other makers and small brands there. That is going to be kind of a little bit away from the mill itself, I think, just to give them more space, and that will be free to attend, and there's kind of cake and coffee you can purchase and bits of lunch, but then you can also pay a very small amount to get a minibus that shuttles you to the mill. They give you a tour, and then the minibus will take you back. So I think that'll definitely be worth doing. So I'm quite excited. I'm also just, the reason I was kind of pausing and stilting as I was describing that to you is I've just noticed that this booklet I've got is issue 1. But I'm just not sure where the subsequent issues are, and because someone else purchased this for me, I'm just a little bit worried that there's some beautiful issues, like annuals from the mill, that are just sat somewhere, either at like a previous address of ours, or maybe at my future mother-in-law's house, I don't know. But yeah, that seems a bit of a shame. I will have to figure out where those are going. So yeah, that is some more future knitting plans. And then I said to you I was going to share with you a product. So I appreciate that lots of my viewers are not based in the UK, but I think this company ship internationally. The company I'm talking about is Marks and Spencer's. They are a British staple. I don't know when they were established, but it was a very, very long time ago. Several generations worth in the UK will know them. They are essentially like, best way to describe them is, they were the equivalent of a department store, in that they kind of had everything from clothing to beauty to homeware to food to flowers to everything, but it was all made by them. And it was like their brand. And then they went through this real dip for a number of years, a number of decades actually, I'd say, where they became very much associated with the older generation and quite like fuddy-duddy clothing, very shapeless, which, don't get me wrong, everyone needs some shapeless garments in their wardrobe, but as in everything was shapeless, and they just were not really seen as being very in style. And I think then the company started suffering in terms of its customers, in terms of its profitability, and then recently They have had such a turnaround, and I am working so hard to just promote them amongst my friends, not because they've paid me, not because they've asked me to, and not because I have any vested interest. I just think in the modern world it's so impressive for companies to do that kind of turnaround on their brand. And when I say turnaround, what I mean is, you know, we're all very aware of how costly good quality clothing can be. They are producing high quality jeans, workwear, daywear at really affordable prices. And when I say affordable, and I know that's a really subjective term, but the average pair of like genuine denim jeans in the UK, from a little bit of research I did the other day, is over £50. That's a minimum, and to be honest, most of them sit way above that. And these jeans are proper denim. They are like rigid, you know, like sturdy. They're not the kind of flexible, stretchy, elastic denim. Proper denim jeans for £20, and that's amazing. And they fit really well, and they have a whole range of styles and colours, and they're true to size, and I just think that's incredible. And it's the same with their workwear. They are really trying to make smart workwear that will last, that will serve its time, that is not just going to kind of lose its shape and go out of fashion within, you know, a year. And they're making it at really affordable prices, and most of all, they're actually thinking about the shape of people's bodies. They're not just going off like the standard fashion industry measurements. They are really thinking about what real people look like. I'm waxing lyrical about them, but my point is they've just brought themselves right up onto trend and they're making themselves affordable, and I think that is a combination that is very commendable. And an example of the kind of, you know, on trend but affordable things they're doing is they've brought out a whole fragrance range. So this is actually a limited edition fragrance. It is pink pepper with jasmine and vanilla. It's an eau de toilette, so not an eau de parfum. And it's just got this gorgeous, like, spicy but light but fresh scent. And it even comes with like a little mini taster of one of their other fragrances. And this set cost £15, but when you see the size of the spray bottle, I think that's quite understandable. So I was looking for a new perfume. I have had a perfume I've used for years that I can no longer find. I don't think the brand do it anymore. I've been using it since I was about 15. I got bought a bottle as a gift. That bottle lasted me 5 years. My other half then bought me a bottle for a Christmas present one year. That lasted me 5 years. And then I finally ran out of it, and I've been looking for another perfume, but I'm just... I don't know about anyone else, but I've got other priorities than spending hundreds of pounds on a perfume. So I've been looking at more affordable alternatives. There are lots of shops like Ceara, lots of other brands that do more affordable perfumes. But I was just really delighted to see one from Marks & Spencer's, and just such a high quality and also high volume product for such an affordable price point. So very pleased, and I'm now gonna spray myself with a load. Not that you can smell it, but it is gorgeous. Oh, so yes, and I've been getting lots of compliments on it, which is always really lovely when people tell you that you smell nice. So I just thought I'd share it with all of you, and if you are looking for something, a kind of specific day-to-day staple, do go and check out Marks & Spencer's. As I say, I don't know what their shipping is like, but I thought it was worth mentioning. But I'm not going to go on anymore because this is a knitting podcast and not a products podcast, but I thought it'd be nice to share products as and when I have one that I really love. So there we go. I will leave this there. I think as an ad hoc episode, I've given you a lot of content, a lot of talking, and you were probably worn out by this point. So I'm going to wish you a lovely weekend. I hope to see you again next Friday. So I'm resuming my normal podcast schedule. This one's just been slipped in as an extra. So between now and then, I hope you have a lovely weekend and week. I hope you get lots of time to do your craft, and I hope you're beginning to get some really good weather if you are in the Northern Hemisphere and you are heading into summer. And with that, I will say bye for now.